I feel like, when I tell people, hey, that food wasn't great, maybe it's not nice in the moment, but long term, I'm giving them an opportunity. Hey, you can improve and you can make your lives better and your future customers better. So you're going to stay in business. So that's the real nice thing to do, even though in the moment I maybe come off, a little harsh, right?
Welcome back, guys. We are on the Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast, and we have the pleasure of speaking with Stefan Asseg. And Stefan, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Really excited to have you here. I know we talked a lot about AI and all these different technology out there, and I know you got a lot of stuff to contribute. So thank you for being part of the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Beautiful. So let's just talk a little bit for our listeners. Tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your history, and how we got to who you are today.
Yeah, so I have a long background in IT consulting, software engineering, that kind of stuff. I did have my own business when I was 19 or so for a couple of years, but then I ended up being an employee for more than 15 years, and then got laid off from Amazon in the big flood of layoffs last year, and decided to do my own thing. I've been wanting to do my own thing, but my issue was always I never knew how to market software engineering, right, or IT consulting, because it's a bit different when it comes to marketing. You don't just go on social media and sell six-figure software projects usually, right? So that was always my block in my mind. So I never did anything. And then I really, after so long in that industry, working for banks and not making that much of a difference after all, right? I wanted to do my own thing and make more of a difference. And then my idea was that, working with smaller businesses and helping them grow, that's going to make an impact where I can see the impact and it's actually going to improve people's lives and not just, help a bank save millions on their infrastructure, right? So that was my motivation. And then I came across Grant Cardone, which that's where you and I met, right? We got certified in the same event last year. And, so that's that. So business coaching and also marketing is what interests me because it's kind of technology heavy nowadays, but still has that impact that I want to make, right? So that's my short story in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's interesting when you look. Actually, I'm doing a presentation this week at the time of the recording where I'm talking with a sales team about gone are sort of the days of the lone gunman sales rep, where they're just out on the street, lone wolf, working by themselves, siloed information. I think that day is in its past. And I think the idea of the integrated team and that's really, having really good fostered collaboration happens. And we all know the best thing that creates collaboration usually is technology. I mean, first of all, it's fundamentally a mentality of collaboration, then backed by technology just to create speed and efficiencies. But I think, the collaboration happens between the teams within sales, whether it be, inside sales, customer support, the outside sales, territory managers, that sort of thing. That's one aspect of collaboration. But the collaboration also, I think, really starts to get a lot of momentum when they start to really collaborate with marketing. And because if marketing has a really good ground floor understanding of what the market's talking about, they can really change the message and craft it so that it can be a lot more effective. And I think one thing that really drew me to Grant was when he said, because he always thought of Grant as a sales guy, like, he was the lone gunman going out on the street and everything. And he made a massive success out of doing it. But then he came to the conclusion, and for me, it took a long time to get to this one, but it was from him, was that marketing is senior to sales. And that marketing is really, if you can do marketing effectively, you're really going to put yourself in a position of massive scaling. And I think Alan, which is one of their guys, I think he spends about $5 million a month on advertising or some stupid amount of money. And what he said is that, sales reps typically go out to the street with a net, kind of chasing butterflies, and which works. And sometimes the butterflies come back alive and sometimes they come back dead. But if you could marketing does is it plants a garden and it draws the butterflies toward it. So the butterflies come towards it and all the salespeople need to do is to keep them there. So I think, your idea around marketing, I think it's really an important concept going into 2024 and beyond. And then we can talk tech about how much fun it is to start integrating tech into that process.
Yeah, exactly. And that for me is kind of fun, because obviously for some people, they're non-tech people. The marketing, that's something they need to do and they realize that, but then all the tech behind it, that's where they are not interested and also don't have the background, right? So that's kind of fun for me to look at those things from, I come from the total opposite side, right? I never had to market anything, but I always had to solve tech problems.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can solve, or I can use tech experience to solve marketing problems. And for me, that's really fun to see. And I'm looking forward to see what the value I can add to my clients by applying tech to something they understand. Because usually in tech, you apply tech to problems nobody even has. And then at some point they understand, yeah, maybe it makes sense once it becomes.
Tech usually is followed up with tech support.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, it's interesting because I think the integration of tech in both sales and marketing is what's going to radically put somebody ahead of the game going into 2024. I mean, when it comes to, either running your podcast or whether it comes to creating content, creating videos, anything like that, even creating training manuals, anything that you put out there. Once you integrate tech, the speed you can get to from a lower investment standpoint is just so strong and compelling of an argument that to embrace tech, even if it's faulty. I mean, I just was on a call with a person today where they were talking about, some agent wasn't producing the right content. I'm like, but how close is it? Are we 80% off or are we, 50% off? And it was about like 75% off of 75% where they want to be. Okay, cool. 25%. So if you had an employee and the employee was off by 25%, are you happy? Or are you just going to help, and you're going to help like sort of coach to success, or are you going to dump the employee? Well, of course you're going to coach to success. Well, that's the same thing that happens with tech. And I think if you treat tech like an employee, I think people will have a lot better ability to digest tech.
Yeah, right. And I think what I noticed, it's there's always that baseline of that person who has their notes on paper, right? And then I feel like the gap gets bigger and bigger and bigger because technology advances. But the people on paper, well, paper doesn't advance, right? So it's kind of like a curve like this. Paper is always here, and then technology is up like that. And then, those people stuck with paper, they're just further and further behind. But the interesting thing now is if you get them to the latest of technology, the jump forward they make is much bigger than maybe for somebody like you and me, right? If you figure out the latest, AI notes taking app that automates creating tasks and organizing your day, maybe you make a little jump forward, right? But for somebody coming from paper, the jump forward they make is gigantic for them, right? So
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you look at that. The micro adjustments that somebody can make to adopt technology over a period of time, if they would have started that a while ago, it's going to be easier now. Now there is certain UX, user interface kind of experiences you can make to try to make that better. But to go from that analog, working with paper to the digital working in that space, it's going to be a tough go for some people. And I think it's going to be worth it in the end, because as they make that adjustment, now, as you said, they're now going to be able to ride that up, and they're going to be able to ride the wave rather than fight against it.
Yeah, right. And I think that's for me where AI comes in, right? In the end, you can have the best user interface in a web portal or in an app, but with AI, if somebody can just talk naturally and then things happen in the background, I think we're just at the very beginning, right? I mean, I'm experimenting with an app right now that I just talk for like 20 minutes, and then what comes out of it is a prioritized task list. I mean, that already beats things, all the planning tools that software teams have been using forever, right? If somebody now comes from paper and they can do that, I feel like that's a much better interface for them than, okay, now click around here and drag and drop, and now they have to learn a whole system, right? Versus now you just talk to it as if you would talk to your person or your team member, and then, things actually happen. I think the things actually happening, that's still in the very beginning, right? Where, maybe AI can create a task list for me, but then I still have to do the task. So I'm really looking forward to me not
the execution.
having to do
the execution side of thing is that comes down to trust barriers. I think for when we look at AI, I think it's just like a new employee. It's in its 30-day trial period, and people are trying to get it in, and it's learning as fast as it can. But I think it's getting there. Like, we use AI for, quick answers to texts. So somebody texts my phone, it'll reply back with AI with whatever answer they're looking for. If it's something simple, if it's something that it can't answer, then it prompts me to answer. So it'll do that. But at least at the first bit, it'll answer those questions. It might be like, hey, when are you available for lunch? No problem. I can answer that. But if it's going to say, solve quantum physics questions or something, not that I could answer that, but it's certainly, it'll say maybe you need to ask somebody else.
Yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
And then you compare that to businesses, they don't even have a phone number that you can send a text to in the first place, right? So again, for them, that jump forward is going to be much bigger. So I'm super
Yeah.
excited.
And you're absolutely right. I think the idea of businesses that say we're a referral based business, so therefore they don't have a website, they don't have anything. I think in a certain situation that might still prove to be okay. But I certainly think there's a new dawn coming into that space. And, with external pressures that are going to put a lot of changes into that kind of, I just go on a referral basis because I
Yeah,
think
right.
there's attrition to everything. Right.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, the referral is fine, but then what happens after that, right? Just because somebody knows you doesn't mean they're a customer of yours automatically, right? So they're still, maybe they're going to text you, and now if your landline doesn't accept text messages, well, you still have a problem, even though you got that referral, right?
Yeah.
So you're still not at the end of actually making a sale, right? So you're still
Actually,
going to
that's
have
it.
to up your
Yeah.
technology.
That's actually a good point. I look at my one physio guy and he's really good. And he's got, when I go in and see him, the second I'm done, he's taking copious notes. And then, but that could be done electronically through AI. So he didn't have to actually be typing. It'll just take the notes and just get permission for recording or whatever you need to. And then the next thing is then immediately I get out videos all through his system of here's what you need to do to fix your stuff. And I mean, I do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, so I break a lot of stuff in this body. So, it's as I get older, it happens on a more frequent basis. But it comes out. Then I go to this other studio where they have this really good prehab program, and like they're really good at what they do because he's the after the problem happened, this is the before the problem happens. But their technology they need to really work on to kind of get that to the forefront so that the experience is really good in and outside of what they're teaching. Because they're, as knowledge subject matter experts, they're unbelievable. They know their craft inside and out. But it's to create that user experience. I think AI and technology really can underpin that.
Yeah, right, right, right. That kind of reminds me of any doctor you walk in, right? The gap there is also getting so much bigger, right? Some practices you walk in and they hand you a stack of like 20 pieces of paper and that's your application form. And then the other doctor, they hand you an iPad or whatever. So yeah, maybe the next version is they'll have an AI, you just talk to it, you just, tell it everything and then it transcribes that for the doc. And then I'd rather go there than having to fill out 20 sheets of paper, right? So,
oh yeah, or have it go to you before you even get there, so you can do convenience. So it can be you're not sitting there wasting your time sitting in their lobby. You're able to be effective on the way coming in. I agree with you on that one. Yeah,
yeah, maybe on the drive, like that's what I've been doing recently a lot. You drive around. It's so much wasted time, right? But I mean, I can talk safely while driving, right? And I can think safely while driving, but I can't type safely while driving. So that really, I mean, I don't even know how we did that when there wasn't AI to use that time, right? I mean, it's such a waste of time. So I think it gives us a lot of time back, right? And for your doctor, for example, if you have that, they have an app and using the AI, you can just talk to it as you're driving there. You don't even have to think before you go there. Perfect, right? And then the application form's filled out once you get there, and you haven't even typed anything, right? So that'd be awesome.
When we look at the medical field, there's I had a fellow who was at my last AI event who was talking about a study that was being done down in somewhere in the States. I think it was somewhere in the States that did the reviews of X-rays. And so they're having AI look at the X-rays and assess them. And they were on a frequency of success rate were better than the doctors, and because they wouldn't miss anything. And so it's interesting to think that I think we're going to see that, especially like in Canada, the medical cost is just off the rails. There's so much fat in that environment that needs to be trimmed. And I think a lot of technology is going to come in and really clean that up to make it cost effective for Canadians to have really good healthcare. Because it's, right now I dummied up my knee and it's going to take months to get an MRI. And we're in the States, I am actually going down to Orlando. I'm just going to get it done in Orlando. It'll take like 24 hours and it's done. But it's just our system is so slow. But if you put in those pre things where like there's a pre-doctor screening where the person's talking to an AI system that can do all the collecting of the data, then it could present that to the doctor in a way that's meaningful. So the doctor is now doing more high level activities and the base level activities of just making sure that, I had one doctor, we went in and she was so busy when we brought my son in, she came in and she started diagnosing the wrong kid and she hadn't even looked at my kid, and she said, okay, well, we got to cauterize his nose. Like, why are we cauterizing his nose when he's got a problem with his ear? And she was just, because she was just all off of her rocker on things. And it just, I think AI is not going to make those issues.
Hmm. Yeah, right. And I think, I mean, it all, for me, it starts with the mindset though, right? Like by design, I'm the most impatient person ever, right? And people always tell me, oh, you got to be patient, you got to be patient. And then my response is usually, patience is the opposite of progress, right? So I feel like a lot of people, the people in your doctor's practice dealing with paper all day, and they are super patient, right? Which works for them. Obviously, maybe their stress level is lower than mine, right? I'm never satisfied with how anything works, right? I want to improve it, but the good thing with not having patience is that I'm not going to deal with that paper thing. So I'm going to improve it as long as it's kind of bearable for me. And I feel like that mindset, if businesses did that more, everybody's experience with that business would be much better, right? So I feel like people should generally have a little less patience and be a little less satisfied with the status quo and just challenge a little more. And then we could all have much easier lives, I feel like. Right?
I think
No
that's
more
amazing.
paper.
Always being a little bit discomfort in what you're doing and saying, how could this be made better? I think that's a beautiful way of looking at things. My question is, how do you vacation with that mindset?
Vacation. So my vacations are usually, like, people would probably hate my vacations because it usually involves off-road toys or race cars or mountain bikes, hauling trailers around. It's never a vacation. I'm usually back on vacation when I'm back to work because I can kind of calm down, don't have to do all of those stressful things. But
That
that's when my
sounds like my
vacation.
kind of vacation.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
never slow down, never settle. That's I feel like that's I've heard that from people who retired at 85 or so, and they were like, once I retired, it all slowed down, and then suddenly getting up at 10 in the morning, that's stressful. So I feel like just don't slow down. That's kind of my goal. Don't slow down and make work fun, and then just do it forever.
I
And
think
then
that's the best
it's
way.
not going to
I
feel like
agree
work.
with you 100%. I think, we look at somebody like Grant Cardone. How old is that guy? He's what, 60 something? And
64.
I think he's actually speeding up. I don't think he's slowing down.
Yeah, right.
So I look at that and I think I'm 48 right now. I got a lot way to go to get to there. So I can keep on speeding up. I'm totally fine.
Yeah, right. And Grant, somehow, if you look at the older videos, he wasn't half as cool back then with 30 or 40, right? And now suddenly, 20 years later, suddenly he's much cooler than back then. So that's totally the opposite of what you'd expect. So I want to achieve that. I want to be cooler when I'm 60 than when I'm now. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. And yeah, I think you're right, actually. He had that big bouffant hair,
yeah.
and now he's got the talk and it just works, so
Yeah,
I
right.
agree with
And
you.
also that I feel like one thing that I respect in him is just that bluntness. Just say what you think. I think the world needs, same as less patience. I think we all need to be more blunt, right? There's so many things out there that should be and can be improved, but nobody says anything, right? I think it's kind of goes along with having too much patience and just, yeah, we're doing great. And I feel like that mindset just, I mean, there's so much more progress we could be making
But that's where
as
AI comes
humanity.
into play. Because when you're talking, say, to ChatGPT and you're trying to fix something in chat, like you first time you jump into ChatGPT, maybe you didn't do this, but a lot of people do. They'll start saying, "Oh, please, do you mind if you could change this part here and whatever?" And now people just go and change this, boom, right? And you don't accept anything less than perfect because there's not going to be a response back saying, "Well, you're judging me." So that ability to accept progress and to consistently discontent with the outcomes allows you can iterate so much faster with AI than you can sometimes with people.
Yeah, right. I feel like I could imagine that for people it's easier because it's not a person, right? Like, let's say you go to a restaurant and the food is totally terrible, the service is terrible, you've waited for hours, the check doesn't come along, and then you still tip them and you're still, yeah, it was great, right? Well, now you're actually taking the opportunity to improve away from that restaurant, right? And now the next person who goes there to eat, they get the same terrible food, terrible service, terrible everything, right? So you just messed it up for the restaurant, for the business, both for the owner and for the employees, and then also for the future customers. So I feel like, when I tell people, hey, that food wasn't great, maybe it's not nice in the moment, but long term, I'm giving them an opportunity. Hey, you can improve and you can make your lives better and your future customers better. So you're going to stay in business. So that's the real nice thing to do, even though in the moment I maybe come off, a little harsh, right? But I feel like it's a service we're doing, right? And not just complaining. So, but it needs the right
Absolutely.
mindset on the other end. And sometimes that's not there. So then what are you going to do?
It makes it harder. Yeah, they call it. I heard a guy, a real estate agent in Kitchener Waterloo, he called it fearless feedback, and I thought that was a great term. And so I'm totally stealing it from him. And so I think the idea that no, this is feedback. This isn't criticism. This is so that you can actually close the loop. In Cardin's what we call closing cycles, right? You can close the cycle on that transaction, knowing what needs to be done to make it better the next time. And if you're running a really good business, the idea that you want that honest, genuine feedback is going to help propel you forward in a big way.
Yeah, right.
So let's talk a little bit about your podcast, because I know you're running a podcast, and let's get listeners to know how they can find you.
Yeah, right. So our company is called Flat Out Business. I'm actually partnered up with a guy who comes from a totally different angle. So he's in accounting and has started, I think, over a dozen businesses himself. And he's actually getting out of accounting, and we're going to focus on the business coaching that we're offering here. And we have a podcast. It's every Wednesday, just not this Wednesday because he's sick. But starting next week, it'll be Wednesday at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And we talk about, both our experiences in starting businesses, but also we're going to have guests on there, telling about their experiences. We're going to have one of our clients joining us probably next week. He's starting a mobile bicycle mechanic business. So that's super exciting. We're supporting him. And so we're just talking about what it means to be an entrepreneur, about the mindset. We're going to talk about things like AI and time management and productivity and all those things. Those are kind of things dear to our heart. So
that sounds like a great show. And I know with your perpetual focus on becoming better, it's going to be an amazing experience for the listeners to come check you out. So I think that's absolutely amazing. Well, as we come close, as we come to the close here, guys, Stefan, I really want to appreciate you for taking the time to spend with us. And I really enjoyed our chat. And I think we're on the same page about so many things, and excited to see you at the next event. We'll see you at GrowthCon for sure. And guys, this is the Money Mindset Mentoring Podcast. Checking out. We'll see you on the next show.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.